In the early days of FNAF, it was very easy to trick people to fall for literally anything, which is why hoaxes were actually pretty common. I kinda wish things were still the same since nothing can top the craze that Sparky the dog or even the purple guy animatronic had within the FNAF fandom when they first came out. Obviously now, we know that these are faked, but it was still pretty cool to think that there were secrets hiding away within the early games, especially with how much stuff Scott has been known to sneak in just to cause the players to go out hunting for any little bit of lore that he's been teasing. Let's go back before March 3rd, 2015, which is when Nights At Freddy 3 was released. At this point, we had no idea who this mysterious purple man was within the FNAF 2 minigames and could only just make countless theories about what exactly was going on. All we knew was that there was this crazed psychopath who was targeting the youth for some reason, which is when we make it to one of my favorite hoaxes that started to gain some traction. We had 2 locations presented so far, with those being the iconic Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, but with no idea what the third game was going to present, and with the FNAF fever rising, people began to speculate. I'm not exactly sure when this theory that the third game was going to be free roam began, but it started to make people think that it could have been some sort of abandoned theme park or a carnival, with that park going to be called Freddyland. This was something that was such a cool concept to me at the time and made sense since the purple guy specifically went after a younger demographic, leading to my desire to play a FNAF inspired project actually located within an abandoned theme park, which is when we make it to the Nights At Freddy's fan game, Tealerland. A game that made me feel creeped out at times, a game that made me at awe with its visually stunning locations and atmosphere, a game that was an absolute shining gem only to be thrown away from the public eye. This is why Tealerland should be remembered. We get introduced to the first cutscene of the game, which shows what appears to be an animatronic that has been broken and decayed, but still able to be active. Don't worry, we'll try to explain what all the lore stuff is for later on. Actually, starting off the game, we get some text explaining it's been years since the unfortunate closure of the Tealerland amusement park, founded by you, the player, David Ardle, and our brother Teal. The reasons for why it closed down was never explained though. Since then, we have moved on and gone our separate ways. The entire time, the park still existed, but it was always abandoned, untouched, until now. Someone familiar decided to call us. The pure excitement I felt when I watched that cutscene for the first time was immeasurable. I have no words to put it. How a project that I almost never heard about, except for some comments here and there, was this graphically advanced was astonishing. Who did we get this call from? Why are we just now getting summoned back to this abandoned park? Things that want to draw us into this game's lore to only get excited to see what the developers have in store for us, which is when we get dropped off to the entrance of the amusement park. Instead of being a traditional free roam section where you're in full control of your body, it instead focuses on the WASD keys for us to move around to another location, with us being able to look around with our mouse. As we progress, we can see that things have been raining until someone is here with us, but there isn't much for us to do about it. After all, you came here for a reason and you are going to complete it no matter what. Once we move some garbage bags, we find an entrance to this underground facility, and it leads us to the first real horror section of this game. We have to climb down this ladder safely, with us having access to a flashlight to light up the area around us. You'll have to listen closely to hear the first enemy that's introduced being Tealer. It's extremely nerve-wracking and is the reason why I absolutely love first-person horror games so much, sitting in the dark as you're traveling down this ladder trying to focus on any faint sounds as this mysterious animatronic that we know is with us, with there even being a cooldown for the actual flashlight as a way to stop us from abusing it too much, making sure that you're paying attention properly and not rushing things too quickly. I especially love this part since I feel like us, the player, were the ones traveling to this facility and really immerses us to this thrilling experience. After a minute, we will finally make it to the real menu of this game. There are 4 main sections: the level select, the characters menu, which will show us the designs of the animatronics and give us a little bit of information about them when they show up, the lore pages that we could collect that will explain the story in much more detail, and finally, the perks. As a fan of RPGs, this kind of surprised me that a FNAF fan game would actually have perks, which would make your game a lot easier. However, it's extremely crucial that you actually unlock these, since this game can be extremely brutal at times. This game understands its mechanics and required playstyle is very different from any other game, so it has a tutorial that you could play through. We are thrown into an office, which, let me just state, its color scheme being this brownish gray, it absolutely fits the atmosphere of a degraded park perfectly. Almost as if the rust has completely consumed the entire underground, as a feeling of dust overwhelms us is very present. The graphics look so stunning and the realism is top notch. I know people love to point out JR's graphics as being the best crafted out of any FNAF fan game out there, but honestly, Tealerland's core visuals of its background and everything within it is so well crafted and executed flawlessly. It definitely is a contender. Now, in the actual tutorial, there are no real animatronics you'll have to worry about, and it's honestly just there to help you learn about the gameplay without feeling too stressed. Something that could definitely be appreciated considering how different it actually is. Unlike other FNAF fan games, we do not stay within the office the entire time. To our left is this hallway, which we'll need to peek through within this keyhole before opening the door. If someone is there, simply stop for a second before moving along so they don't attack you. The reason why we need to go outside in the first place is so we can fully use our computer. Something that I don't think I've ever seen any other FNAF fan game ever do before is create a system on a computer as stressful as this. To start off, you must go to the supplies closet at the beginning of every shift. Then, collect the spare parts on the ground. These parts are scattered all around, so you'll need to go looking for them in various different locations. Once we do that, you must assemble it to the T-lure. It's really cool that you, the player, actually assembles this animatronics ourselves, using the spare parts all around, really making you feel like you're creating something. After we finally finish up the T-lure animatronic, we will be able to control them within the computer inside the office, inside this kind of mini game. There is this little circle around us as we move around, and it's very important that you do not stop moving at all if you're controlling them. If you do, it will cause the T-lure to start getting a virus, slowly getting infected. If completely taken over, it needs you to run into the supply closet in order to click on this Zanny backdoor file. Not doing this fast enough or clicking another file by accident will cause the T-lure to become completely corrupted. Instead of being an ally, they will instantly come after you and jump scare you. Such a cool concept that the animatronic that you yourself built somehow needs to not only lure the animatronics hunting you away, but has the chance that the machine you built with your own 2 hands can turn against you because of a virus corrupting it. I absolutely love this concept, and in practice it works extremely well, causing you to always have the fear that something that's supposed to be your only ally in this abandoned location has a chance to turn on you at any moment if you mess up. Not only will standing still cause a machine to actually get corrupted, but being near any of the animatronics will slowly corrupt it as well, so there's always that chance. Which is when we make it to actually how to beat each section, being the lure mechanic. Once the T-lure is next to one of the other animatronics, they will start filling up this meter, and once full, they can start following you around. Which is when we will need to lead them into one of the empty rooms in order to lock them away. A pretty easy and simple mechanic. After every section, you'll have to lift up this notebook with a list of things that you need to do that you have to check out before leaving. An actually unique way of ending your shift. We should acknowledge how this game isn't actually time-based like many other FNAF fan games, but actually goal-based, so it depends on how efficiently you, the player, are able to contain all the threats for each hour. Before moving on, it's important to state that we aren't underground for 5 whole nights, but instead, each section is broken into 5 hours, something that I found only added to the urgency towards the situation, since it's all happening in a span of 1 night. Let's be honest, it's always been weird that the night guard, or whoever was working within these haunted locations, would stay for 5 whole nights, or sometimes even more. It would try to get explained that they had this connection to whatever location they were in, but it always seemed a little off. So to create 5 hours instead, it almost feels like a character is actually trapped within this place and is trying their best to hold out as they try to find out why exactly they were sent to their old abandoned park. This is when we finally get introduced to the first real hour of the game, which shows us Tealer, the Jester. Tealer's design was something that shocked me since he was a dragon, not a real-life animal. If you've noticed from most other FNAF fan games that use unique designs, the animatronics are almost always based on a real-life creature. Whether it's domesticated life like chickens and cats, wild animals like bears and weasels, or even modeled to look human. Fantasy creatures have so much potential, which is why I absolutely love his design with his freakishly large grin that cuts into his face, going from ear to ear, his makeshift armor, mechanical wings, and jester outfit. Everything about him is such a perfect mixture of creepy, unsettling, but with a sprinkle of comedy to top it all off. A really solid design. If Tealer somehow finds us within the halls, do not stare at him or he will attack you. Immediately run to either the supply closet or the office. If he's in a keyhole, look away as quickly as possible. He's not the only animatronic introduced within this night, as there's something called an ambient threat. Already, this game has established itself to really care about not only its visuals, but also its gameplay, since it tries to engage the player within its world. The way it does this is by forcing a player to not be a couch potato, constantly sitting at the computer screen the entire time, but showing us Willow, the Wyvern, a character design that I believe was inspired by a magician, which is... just look at her. It's a dragon looking thing dressed like a magician. Do I really need to say anything more? An ambient threat is something that will always target us with no way of slowing her down. Although the main goal of this game is to trap all the animatronics each hour within the rooms, she is one of the few who cannot be lured at all. An easy way to know this is the characters in red need to be trapped while the characters in yellow need to be watched. Every so often, she'll head towards the hallway and laugh. When this happens, you'll need to go out in the hall and stare at her since she just loves the attention until she goes away. If you don't, you'll get attacked by her. Something I failed to mention is most of the jump scares in this game are just classified as attacks, not instant game overs, as we actually have a health bar giving you some space to breathe. Though the Tealer is always going to be an instant loss if he gets corrupted. We could heal our HP once per night with a needle in the supply closet, but other than that, we only usually have 2 chances before we're complete goners. Now, the reason why I love Will's gameplay mechanic is due to the simple rule of don't make your fan games exploitable. It's just not that fun to be able to choose a section, so to purposely create an animatronic meant to force you away from a computer screen in a way that felt fair shows the time put in thinking about the gameplay elements. So far, the gameplay loop was established to begin each hour by building the Tealer animatronic ourselves, trap anyone we need to within the rooms, and to watch out for the others that are coming towards us. A simple but interesting and unique loop that has never been done before. Once again, signing off everything we did for this hour before moving on to the next. Every time we beat a section, we usually get a cutscene or phone call, but I'll be saving them until the end so we can explain what exactly is going on in one tiny lore bite. After you beat an hour, you'll unlock hard mode for that section, which actually has quite a few changes. For one, the AI is obviously a lot more aggressive. Usually in the normal hours, the animatronics will typically give you enough time to breathe as you collect the parts for the Tealer. However, Tealer and Willow might become active before you even finish. If the lore becomes corrupted with the virus, you only have 15 seconds to repair it instead of the normal 20. Finally, the computer monitor will require a randomly generated password, with there being a code above that you must input. In the early nights, it's not that big of an issue since it's honestly just there to waste your time. However, later on, the few seconds wasted here could be what ends your run. Also, there's this reddish filter on the entire screen as we played through hard mode, which I absolutely felt like fit the aesthetics of this difficulty. It's just a little design changes like that that could really make me appreciate everything that this game has to offer. Now, the second hour is very similar to the first one, except for the inclusion of Frill. Much like his name, his design is that of a frilled lizard, who is dressed up like a knight. I really love the whole medieval aesthetic that this game is going for, since dragons and knights really do go well together in the form of the animatronics. We will sometimes hear Frill banging on a door next to us, and if we do, run to the keyhole and stare at him until he goes away. If you don't, he'll break in and attack us. For this hour, just lure both Frill and Tealer into the rooms to be able to finish up. Hour 3 gives us my second favorite animatronic within this game, being Tracy. I didn't know mimes existed during medieval times, but hey, this game taught me something new. Now, Tracy, much like her character design, fits her aesthetic due to how silent she is. Frill will always be able to be detected due to how angrily he'll bang on the doors. Tracy, though, decides to creep up on us instead. She still has the same mechanic of need to stare at her to make her go away, but since she doesn't make much noise, it's a lot harder to know when she's at your door. So you'll often need to get off your computer to look through the keyhole in order to see if she's there just in case. For now, this really isn't an issue since on normal mode, you can leave whenever you want and don't need to log into the computer every single time. Even on hard mode, these early hours aren't that difficult either. However, the animatronics will start to become a lot more aggressive soon. That's not the only thing to happen on this night, as it also introduces us to the generator. Before, the power was normal, but now it has started to fail, requiring you to have to start refilling it with gas cans that can be found on a computer in order to keep it functioning. If for some reason you run out of power, then the lure will stop working, essentially forcing you to refuel in order to beat the hour. Hour 4 brings us technically 2 new animatronics, with the main one being Mischievous, who is also a dragon. His design is that of a clown, which is I really couldn't care less about him visually speaking. His gameplay mechanic, however, is something that I think is pretty unique. He is the second ambient threat that we encounter, meaning we cannot lure him into the rooms and so must just avoid him at all times. Unlike most other characters who appear in the keyhole, he does not, but instead we must listen to his glitched music box or glitched voice box. If we hear it, then we cannot leave the room we are currently in, or else we'll get attacked. He's more like an invisible threat that forces you to use your ears more than your eyes, which I thought was pretty cool. The reason why I said there's 2 new animatronics was due to the second one being called the Doll, a busted up dragon who's being controlled and planted by Mischievous, which only adds to how we must use our ears to counter these 2 new animatronics. How the doll works is it will be put into the office or supply closet in the opposite room that you're in, where you will start to hear this ticking sound. As time passes, this ticking will only get louder, basically starting the hide and seek minigame with it. You'll need to go look for them and click on it in order to stop them from attacking you. The scary part of not finding it on time is its bleeding effect, which will force you to go to the supply closet in order to use our only medkit. This is probably the best night to play gameplay wise, since it was definitely difficult due to the abundance of tasks needed to be done while also managing the different animatronics coming after us within the office. However, it felt fair, and wow. Hour 5 made me want to quit. I streamed it quite a bit ago and then replayed it recently in order to more accurately make this video. I just want to state that the AI for the animatronics last night genuinely felt difficult. You won't be able to take any kind of breather since it felt like there was always someone at the doorway waiting for you to mess up just so they could end your night. For that stream and my rerun, I actually believe I won not by getting better, but by simple RNG being on my side. Since I absolutely hate Mischievous and his stupid doll creature always showing up at the worst possible time. Not only that, the generator decides to run out of fuel almost every 10 seconds, which made trying to lure all the animatronics within the rooms a living nightmare. Was it fair? Definitely didn't feel like it. Was it fun though? Yup. I did get frustrated, but honestly it was a fun kind of frustration since I understood it happened due to my own inability to maintain all the different animatronics properly. The way the unique gameplay felt was honestly something that entertained me in 2 different playthroughs and didn't feel like it got old. After a few attempts, you should be completely fine as we make it to the final section of this game. Somehow, all the animatronics have been fused into one who is now named the Deterrent. Boss battles in FNAF fan games have become a staple for some unknown reason. I get the appeal since boss fights in any genre is pretty cool, I guess. It's something that the Resident Evil games have done multiple times to varied success, so horror games have had a history of having bosses. But in FNAF fan games specifically, there's this new trope that's been done repeatedly where the final extra night seems to be all the animatronics fused into one super robot, like in the Treasure Island series and once again in JR's. To be honest, the final designs for all these animatronics are usually pretty awesome, like Hourglass being one of my all-time favorites, with Junior's Mangled being extremely sick as well, with the Deterrent being no exception, from its name being super threatening with its almost bone-like structure. Even though we know that it's metal, the sleek designs are so well made, the wires and what it looks look absolutely amazing, and even in game, it doesn't lose any of its appeal. This animatronic genuinely looks scary to the point that you know you should fear for your life. Not only does this character have a really... I feel like I've been saying cool too many times now. What's another word that means that? Let me check. Not only does this character have a really rad design, the complete change within the gameplay was something that genuinely shocked me. This boss would come after us within this dark location, but fortunately we do have a flashlight. Unfortunately, that flashlight does have a battery, which means we'll have to use it conservatively or else it's game over. In order to actually do damage to it, we'll have to use a computer behind us which has this layout. These 4 boxes are actually generators, and the way we hurt the deterrent is so interesting. We have to somehow lure him into one of these rooms, then overcharge these generators once they're inside. Once we do that, we explode the generators while they're trapped. The scary part of this section is the fact that we're completely pitch black for the most part, since when we're charging the generators, the lights will completely disappear. When we actually hear him crawling up towards us, we will see this. An extremely terrifying encounter that is so effective, especially for the setting of this location. The cave we are now in makes us feel trapped, which is only amplified by the sound design and the music. It is intense as it rises up as time progresses. This is a fight that was both enjoyable and difficult, trying to manage your flashlight while pushing back the deterrent and charging up the generators to be ready to use as weapons against the boss. All of these made for a challenging but fair system that really causes you to think about your actions. As time progresses, the colors around us turn more and more red until we finally do the final hit, revealing this cutscene.
Don't you despise me? Don't you want me gone? For all the times I tried to fix your wrongdoings, I have already lost. So go ahead, David. Free me from this place.
And then the credits hit. This was an extremely enjoyable experience that made me surprised that I haven't heard much about it ever since it got released. In my opinion, I think the reason why this amazing game was left kind of forgotten wasn't due to its mechanics being unrememberable or the animatronic designs being bad, but instead due to the fact it was kind of like a one-off project that had a clear ending, leaving it with not a lot of potential to have any kind of sequels. In fact, let's go back to see what exactly was going on within the story. Zany Corp, a company that would be very important for later on, was what owned the Tealerland brand and was created by David and Teal in 1973. David, you could consider the more mechanical of the two, as he was the one who had an interest in making the animatronics. Teal, though, he had other plans. Most of their businesses that they had previously were just small cafes that had only one animatronic. As these locations grew in popularity, they would soon continue to expand until they created the Tealerland amusement park in 1990. After acquiring enough employees, Tealerland was ready for its grand opening. A location such as this looked like it was going to be a massive success. Nothing can go wrong. Except Teal wasn't happy. He didn't like how the animatronic mascots looked like. He was responsible for creating the character designs, while David, our character, was given the important task to turn these designs into reality. Teal wanted more realistic looking characters, but David, he wasn't able to deliver. He felt like he did everything he could. He spent many sleepless nights before the construction of Tealerland in order to make these animatronics look absolutely perfect. Though, to his own credit, he didn't believe it was into his best interest to replicate the original designs to be perfectly one-to-one. Instead, he designed the animatronics to be easily repaired, easily maintained, and easily upgraded or changed. Teal tried to push against this, saying they need to change in order to fit his own image, but it didn't matter. This would be the first of many fights between the two brothers. After a year after the grand opening of Tealerland, an interest for it took a very heavy dip. Funding was getting lowered and it was affecting business. They planned to branch out to other locations, but there was no budget to do so. Employees had to be laid off constantly and maintenance was just not possible. David didn't really care to find out why interest for the amusement park was disappearing. Teal was different though. He completely blamed everything on the designs of the mascots his brother was supposed to build. Teal thought these animatronics looked too creepy, too unnerving for the customers. The suits are made out of a fragile material which would begin to melt and sag over time, especially around their iconic faces. Enough was enough for him. He decided to tamper with the animatronics without David knowing. Why? In order to somehow gain an understanding of the mechanics of each character to potentially design his own suits. This would backfire horribly. He would accidentally damage both the suits and the endoskeletons within them. Even more time would pass and the staff, at least the very few that weren't fired, were getting increasingly annoyed about how often the animatronics would break down. David knew about this situation but said nothing. He would soon after go into the underground facility built under the park to see if there was something there that could help him understand what exactly was going on. This led to a discovery that would forever change his life. As he was going down that ladder, the underground was eerily quiet. He felt something was wrong but kept walking around to see maybe there was something that he missed that could explain the animatronic's behavior. It wouldn't be until he found Tealer, the animatronic he worked so hard on. Next to him was the lifeless body of an employee just laid out on a dirty floor. He got closer, only to notice that the employee had a huge cut at the center of his chest. There was no screams nor any calls for help heard before this incident. There was no reason to make this go public. After all, something like this would permanently cause the already struggling park to go permanently under. Something he did not want to happen, and so he hid the body within Tealer's withering torso, telling everyone that the underground facility was now prohibited from having any kind of staff under there, essentially discarding Tealer and that employee within the depths of the park with no one else knowing anything that happened. Since the underground facility was closed, the park was told to be out of order for the next few months, which is why it was never publicly disclosed as to why it shut down. There were many fights as to whether or not it was worth continuing working on the park. The Zany Corp would close down for good, along with the Tealerland amusement park. Dave saw this as a potential win, as he wanted the public to completely forget about the park's existence. altogether, never telling his brother Teal about what happened that day, which is when they simply parted ways in order to work on their own separate projects. Although the Zany Corp was sold to an unknown buyer, the Tealerland Park was completely abandoned and untouched for nearly a decade. Teal didn't feel satisfied with the resolution of what happened, which is when he decided to go back to visit the old park after so many years. Inside, he went to the underground facility without anyone knowing, only to find a slowly decaying employee inside the Tealer suit. His brother, who helped him create these animatronics, the animatronics that were meant to entertain. Did David do this? Is this why he was so quick to close on the park, or why he didn't want to make the animatronics fit his own designs? He didn't want this disgusting cover-up to stay hidden forever. Teal would go around salvaging any spare parts he could find and the blueprints that were left behind in order to build his own modules to take control over his brother's creations using radio signals. The year now became 2000. David wakes up to a mysterious phone call. The bait worked. The monster was drawn back into its home. We always assumed that we, David Arnold, were the good guys in the situation. I mean, we were the ones playing and getting attacked for seemingly no reason. After every hour, we get a phone call, and in the first one, we actually get a short cutscene as well. I believe that this was Teal when he was first breaking into the underground facility and finding the decomposing employee. The shock fits with the sound design. After finding all of the lore pages, we get his character profile. A traitor. A man with no guilt, a man with no regret. When he arrived at the facility, he brought an old Tealer mask along in hopes that the animatronics would mistaken him for one of their own, but it was a futile attempt. The more time he spent on the ground watching his creations try to end him, the more his state of mind would begin to suffer. He would ultimately be the one responsible for the death of Teal Ardle, his own brother. After the final events that happened within the park, David was caught and arrested. He now silently suffers within the confines of his prison cell indefinitely. We were the bad guy in the situation, but there's some things that aren't exactly explained clearly to us. The most important one out of everything is, how did the employee actually pass away? If the lore pages are to be trusted, David just found the employee like that with his chest opened. It isn't told to us that he himself did it, nor was it ever implied that Teal was responsible either. Was Teal's tampering of the animatronics what caused this incident? Not exactly sure, but what we definitely do know, David did hide a body knowing full well what it meant for the park's future. Teal would find this but would rightfully assume his brother was responsible. If there was more communication, then this misunderstanding most likely would have never happened, though it has been told to us that the relationship between the brothers was very damaged at that point, often fighting. So, the graphics, the gameplay, the story were all things that I adored. Without a doubt, this is one of the best FNAF fan games that I have ever played. I'll be honest, playing a FNAF fan game will lead you to having one or two amazing aspects, like the graphics story being absolutely cool, while another will be lacking, like the gameplay wasn't that appealing. Here though, it nailed everything absolutely perfectly to the point that I genuinely want more. Its visuals were stunning. Let's just talk about how the aesthetics of the background look with the amazingly crafted assets. The animatronics themselves are just unbelievable. With how graphically advanced they looked, you would think that they would have a hard time being incorporated within the gameplay, but nope. The keyhole part where we get a close-up of their faces with the hallway sections allowing us to see their entire bodies, as well as the jump scares being so good. My only complaint is that they felt a little too fast, but still amazing. The gameplay itself was so unique that I have a hard time finding anything else to compare it with, creating an experience that felt extremely fun but difficult for all the right reasons, with the story that I outlined being so simple. I don't mean simple in a bad way, but simple as it's really grounded in reality. I was expecting something much more paranormal, or at least an impossible scenario. Obviously, being able to control the animatronics to hunt down someone is very far from reality, but what I'm specifically talking about here is the fact that David finds a body, hides it within an animatronic, with Teal finding it and misunderstanding the entire situation. The ending is literally David ending Teal with his own hands. Yes, the animatronics were a large part of the story, but they didn't really do a lot of the heavy lifting. David did it himself. And that's what I love most about this story. A twist ending that you really wouldn't understand unless you dug up the information yourself, which made me feel like a detective finding out where these lore pages were. Overall, Tealerland was an experience unlike any other that you should definitely check out for yourself. It's completely free and it's going to be linked down below if you want to play it. This truly was a FNAF fan game that was forgotten and thrown away as time passed. If you like this video, like and subscribe. Make sure to comment something down below if you finished all the way until the end. I'm sure you could find something interesting to talk about. In the meantime, I'm tired for talking for so long, so I'm going to go take a nap. Until next time.